The world of parasport is more than medals and accolades. Join hosts Greg Westlake and Travis Murao as they delve deeper and examine the important issues impacting sport. This is Beyond the Field.
Hello, I'm Greg Westlake. Like everyone, athletes had their worlds flipped upside down when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020. So on this edition of Beyond the Field, we discuss the challenges of training and competing during a global pandemic. After the break, Travis talks to the Canadian Paralympic Committee's Chief Medical Officer for the Tokyo and Beijing Games, Dr. Andrew Marshall. But up first, we go to my conversation with Paralympic swimmer Danielle Kisser. First off, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
It is going to be fun. So it was your Paralympic debut. First off, just tell us how it went overall. How was your experience?
Well, I mean, I think anyone who goes to their first games, it's just such a surreal experience, and it's such an honor to represent your country in that capacity. And for me, like, this was a dream that I've had for over 13 years, and so to finally get to walk that out and to see that actually come to pass was just a really incredible experience.
And I know that there's some, I don't want to say drama, but there were some special circumstances that led to you being a part of Team Canada, and we're going to get there. But I'm just very curious. Take me back to the day when you found out that government regulations were coming in and you realized your training was going to really be impacted. How'd that make you feel?
Well, that's quite a roller coaster in and of itself, but we were actually supposed to be in a swim meet the weekend that everything started shutting down, and all of a sudden our swim meet got canceled, and we were thinking, okay, well, it'll be fine, we'll regroup in a few days, and then a few days turned into a trip back home to BC, and that was supposed to be a 2-week thing, and then that turned into a 5-month thing, like I'm pretty sure everyone out there can relate to with the pushing of COVID and stuff. And so I realized quickly that I probably wasn't going to have access to a swimming pool. And right in the middle of kind of realizing that and trying to figure out my own emotions with COVID, I was meeting with my sports psychologist, and I realized that I kind of needed to have a project. Like, I felt like I needed to do something that had an end result, because all of a sudden everything that we had worked for was just up in the air. And as an athlete, like, we're constantly working. We're always trying to get better. We're always trying to go on to the next thing. And all of a sudden, all those next things are gone. You're kind of left like, okay, what do I do? Like, how do I keep, like, staying mentally engaged? Like, what's the purpose of this? And so we thought that finding a project around my house would help me find an end result and channel my competitiveness into something. And I remember my sports psychologist said, like, oh, you could make a birdhouse or something. And I was like, I don't really think I want to make a birdhouse. And then we were joking, and we were like, oh, you could make a swimming pool. And then the call, like, went silent, and we were like, I don't know, like, I could make a swimming pool. Like, I think that could actually be a thing. And I'm someone who, like, I like to be a little bit dramatic. I like to have the wow factor. Like, I really don't mind being in the center of attention at times. And so I was like, yeah, I know I could make a pool because I'm a swimmer and I need a pool, so I might as well build one. And so I did eventually, and built a swimming pool in my backyard, and then I used that to help with training.
That's incredible. And, you know, I do have to ask, as it pertains to just making Team Canada, that's often for a lot of athletes the hardest part about the games, is just getting to the games. So how did COVID, the pandemic, and all that just affect the selection process for your swim team?
Oh, that's a pretty loaded question. It's pretty complicated, lots of different levels. But basically what happened was, because our trials got canceled and postponed, that they decided not to host a trials for the para side, which was a little difficult to not be able to race and to put yourself on a team in that way. So what they did was they went through a process of selection, and so they took times that people went from 2019, and they selected a group of athletes based off of that for the team. And then they allowed 6 of us to swim for the last 4 spots on the team afterwards. And so it was honestly a very tough few months, where some of our teammates just got selected based off of performances from the past, and then others like myself got selected to swim for a time. But then we also had other teammates who were just told that that was the end, and they weren't even eligible to select. And so we're going with 3 different scenarios in this really really intense period of time because everybody wants to go to the games. Everybody wants a chance. And for some of my teammates, that chance was just taken away. And for other people, they got an opportunity which they got to use, but also it was frustrating for them because we're meant to race. Like that's why we swim. We want to compete. And so it was a difficult time for sure. And then when I did do that race to try to make the team, it was an individual time trial, so nobody else was allowed in the pool. It was just me. And when you're expected to go a high-level world qualifying time in a situation that is not conducive to that, it was definitely a bit of a struggle.
So am I hearing at first that you need the fans and the excitement? You thrive off the energy?
Oh yeah, definitely thrive on the atmosphere for sure. Staring at a black line does not always cut it for motivation. So when I tried out for those last 4 spots, I was the 5th person, so I missed it, and so that was tough in itself. And I remember I had went home and I had taken a bit of a break, and then I got a call that my teammate Tess Routliff, she was in a gym accident, and we weren't sure if she was gonna be able to go to the games, and so I was put forward as the alternate, and that was just really tough because I mean Tess and I we're really close. We've been through a lot together. We've really grown together, and we've been teammates together. And so just to see your friend having to deal with that while also now being on the verge of potentially fulfilling a lifelong dream is 2 things that just don't mesh well together. We really had to work at separating the relationship part and wanting to be there for your friend versus wanting to fulfill a lifelong dream.
100%. I come from a hockey background, so we deal with injuries all the time. And one of the hardest things is when you have to take a spot of somebody that you love that person, but you got to step in and take that spot, and it's a weird experience. But I think you owe it to the person that's out and injured to give it your best and to make them proud. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think a big thing that helped was that it wasn't. I knew that I wasn't undeserving of the spot. Like you're an alternate. You had to swim a time to get you into that spot. You had to perform, and so I had. And if the team was bigger, maybe things would have been different or whatnot. And so I really worked at just reminding myself that if this opportunity did happen, that I deserved to be there, and that I would treat it like a great opportunity to fulfill a dream. And that's what ended up happening. And so yeah.
I think that's amazing, and I'm going to be following you now for your journey to the next games. I'm a fan, and I'm just going to ask one kind of harder question here. If the next games don't happen, and let's just say this was the only games you ever competed in, would you be okay with that? Do you feel like you got your Paralympic experience?
I would be. I think. I don't know, I love life. I love the opportunities that it has, and I've loved getting to meet the people I have, and I'm not in charge of how my story is written. I just get to live it, and I get to do the best that I can. And so if this was my last games, then it was, and I got to do something incredible, and I'll give it my best shot. But at the end of the day, if I don't make it, I've still had an incredible experience, a fun career. I've enjoyed it, learned a lot of tough things, but I will be completely satisfied.
Danielle, I appreciate you today. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, and you're going to share so much educational info with all of Canada soon when this comes out, so thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a great time.
More to come on Beyond the Field. This is Beyond the Field.
Welcome back. I'm Travis Murao. Earlier in the show, Greg spoke with Danielle Kisser about the challenges she faced on her road to Tokyo. As Chief Medical Officer for the Canadian Paralympic Committee, or CPC, Dr. Andrew Marshall faced some unique challenges of his own in Tokyo and Beijing. While not his first games as top doc, the pandemic impacted his team in their role. I spoke with Dr. Marshall from his home in Ottawa. Dr. Andy, it's great to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So Doc, Chief Medical Officer, can you tell me a little bit about what that job entails?
Yeah, so it's a job that's kind of runs from half a year, maybe even 1 year out before the games. right through to the games, and then after the games went debriefing and stuff like that. So we're doing a lot of arranging of where we're going to go, what we're going to do, what the hospital is going to look like, what kind of medical supplies, and also then coordinating who's going to be there and who's going to cover what sports and all that kind of stuff. And then afterwards kind of just, covering the actual games, which is, 2 weeks, but it's the biggest 2 weeks. So if you're not the CMO, that's the only part you show up for, and you think, oh, this is a pretty easy job, I could do that. But it sometimes can be challenging with the politics, with the different things that have gone on, especially in the last couple of years.
So I'm wondering if you could tell me, what are some of the differences between organizing a game during, regular games and during the pandemic?
Yeah, so the pandemic changed pretty much a lot of things, because before we would go on site visits, we would sort of visit every venue, look at the hospital, see if that was, is this what we would expect, what we would want. We would be able to have meetings, so we would go to the meetings and we would meet with the other CMOs to talk about any issues. And then since the pandemic, it really became all about COVID and the questions about it, and making sure people were vaccinated, making sure people were safe. Started off with getting people to training. When we first started, we all got locked down, and there was a lot of questions about, can we train? Is it safe to? What do we do if someone's got a cold or does get COVID? So I learned a lot of things about medical stuff that an orthopedic surgeon doesn't necessarily get trained for.
So what were some of the contingency plans you had to have in place in case of a positive test by an athlete?
There's kind of 3 phases. Was it before they came, and then getting them treated, making sure they were negative, getting the tests, and the paperwork for some of the countries that we needed to go to. There was arriving and testing positive, which is a big deal because people were put into isolation. They could be separated from the team, and they could be there for a while. And then obviously during the games, if someone started to have symptoms, then is it just that person that gets isolated, or do you end up isolating their roommate or the whole team or the whole country? So there was a lot of different plans in place. What's the best practices to prevent people from getting COVID, so that they could compete and train and compete safely.
So with the benefit of hindsight, is there anything that you would have done from a medical staffing standpoint differently?
I'm very proud of the fact that we had no athletes that got COVID traveling to games, at games. So I think from that point of view, I'm pretty happy about that. Were we too restrictive? At the time, it didn't seem that way. And we felt that we had to do some things to make sure that people were safe. But maybe we could have been a little more aggressive. But it would only take, and we saw this in many, many teams from other countries, that they were that little bit more aggressive, and it blew up in their face that they got to the games and they had half their team because the other half was out with COVID. So I don't think I have any major, things that I would go back and change. I think the mental health part of it, maybe we could have come in a bit quicker with, but once again, I think when it's all said and done, it worked out pretty well.
So what would you say are some of the big things that you've learned from these pandemic games that you're going to bring forward to future games?
One of the big things, it's crazy, but we went to, normally when we go to a games, we take Tylenol, cough and cold, we take stuff for people to get diarrhea and GI problems. That didn't happen. Both games, both winter and summer games, I don't even know if we cracked the lid on the Tylenol container. People masked, they took care of themselves, and they washed their hands. And a lot of those other diseases just didn't occur. So one of the big debates right now is, do we maybe consider doing some of these same things going forward? And certainly some of the cleansing it, keeping clean, washing hands. I think a lot of athletes, as well as a lot of other staff members, have learned that, yeah, we can, if we do this, this can help. So that's positive reinforcement. You know, certain things like masking, people don't love that, but you know, if you're sick, then you mask. The one thing I think as Canadians that we should be very proud of is that we were leaders in this. You know, certainly from a medical point of view, we did protocols to gather information, to create content, and published it so that, you know, many other countries and many other sports adapted some of the rules and some of the processes to get people back to training, as well as how to get them back after having COVID to sport and things like that. So I think we, you know, overall we should be very proud of the process that we did.
Couldn't agree more, and I think our lack of COVID cases is a huge feather in your cap. So thanks a lot, Doctor, for all that you do.
Okay, thank you.
Stay tuned for more Beyond the Field. You're watching Beyond the Field.
Welcome back. I'm Greg Westlake with my co-host Travis Murao. Today we're talking all things training and competing during a global pandemic. Travis, you're an incredible member of the wheelchair rugby team that competed in Tokyo. It was your third games. How was this experience different than the other two?
Well, I think every game is a unique experience, but probably this one more so than most. I think especially when we were training, when all of the gyms were shut down, I really realized that why I'm a team sport athlete, where getting on the erg by myself in my apartment and slaving away, it gave me a new appreciation not just for individual sport athletes, but for rowers especially, man. That was a beast.
You know what, I completely relate to that. Toward the end of not at the end of the pandemic, I feel like we're still kind of in it, but as things started to open up more in Canada, I actually loved it because we had the gym to ourselves, which was nice. I just felt bad for all the kids that didn't have the opportunity to go play the sports that they love to play. But for me, it was early in the pandemic when everything was shut down, and I was in my basement doing like push-ups and sit-ups, and you didn't feel like a high-performance athlete, right? I just felt like a weekend warrior trying to stay fit.
Oh, it was just brutal. And then once we went to the games, I think right off the bat, we realized things were going to be a lot different this time around, where one of our favorite things to do is to go inside the cafeteria, see all the other athletes from all the other countries and hang out and see people we haven't seen for years. And this time it just wasn't the same. Did you find similar experiences in Beijing?
Well, I was sad that my family couldn't attend. I was sad that my wife couldn't attend. For me, it was my last games, and it was my 5th games, my final one. And it was nice to be there with my teammates, of course, but I would have loved for after my final game just to go give my mom a hug and say hi to my dad and give a big kiss to my wife. Like, that would have meant the world to me. And even for them, it's such a neat experience for them, where sport drives a lot of travel for my family. You know, my wife comes to the games and follows. You know, she would never have gone to South Korea if I wasn't in Pyeongchang. But she would have come to Beijing and China, and all these life experiences were kind of taken, and that made me sad. Are you a guy that your family goes to the games all the time, or?
So for me, I think my family can take or leave certain games, but Tokyo was definitely one that everyone had circled on their calendars and were just super psyched to go and attend. So that was doubly disappointing for me, especially looking at how well organized those games were and the volunteers and the venues that they had. I really do think that it could have been an amazing games, and not that it wasn't. I think maybe your results are kind of coloring some of my memories of the event.
Did you have any frustration knowing that other countries in the world had different restrictions than what we had?
That's a great question, because that was a huge source of anxiety and frustration for our team, where we were one of the very fortunate sports in that we were allowed to continue training during the pandemic, but we saw other countries where there weren't as many restrictions getting together in training camps as a whole team. And we thought that was a huge advantage, but it's crazy how it didn't play out like we thought it would in Tokyo, where some of the teams with the tightest restrictions did the best. So it goes to show you that things don't always go the way you expect.
Yeah, we were the opposite, I'd say. But, you know, it was stressing us out because with social media now, you see everything. Yeah. And maybe you're not best friends with a guy on another country, but you're going to see, you know, and open an Instagram account and see what they're up to. And it was causing us stress and anxiety just knowing that our neighbors to the south, the Americans, were together as a full team. And they were centralized and they were working. Meanwhile, I couldn't go train with my best friends in Alberta because I wasn't allowed to get on a plane and go to a rink, and we were shut down. So, you know, we were stick handling pucks in our garage. while other countries were on ice. And it kind of takes the whole fairness out of sport where you don't get an equal opportunity to train and compete. But that being said, I mean, there's no excuses. No one's going to care about that 10 years from now. The results are the results, right?
Now, knowing that these games were about as irregular as the games that you can get, and these were your last ones, you're retiring now, is there any temptation to come back and maybe give it one more shot with a more regular training schedule, a more regular Paralympic cycle?
You know, it's a great question, and it ties into like everything we've talked about on Beyond the Field. So watch all the episodes. But yeah, maybe. I mean, you could show me a big fat check and I would come back. But as of right now, no, there's no chance I would play unless we opened up that AAP vault and made it worthwhile. Travis, I have to ask, you know, we did so much reflection and soul searching. Was there anything you learned about yourself while you were training to be a high performance athlete during the pandemic?
I learned that it definitely takes a team for us to achieve any success, and I can't do it on my own. I need a team supporting me. I need guys holding me accountable, having my back, encouraging me, and I think this pandemic more than anything else highlighted that for me. How about you?
Well, so much. You know, we all get by with a little help from our friends, so to speak, and I relied on my teammates, my family, my wife, the great people I have in my support team to help me through hard times, because I think athletes and non-athletes alike all learned so much about ourselves during this pandemic. Unfortunately, it's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Field. For Travis and myself, we'll see you next time.
Hosts Greg Westlake, Travis Murao, producer Ted Cooper, associate producer Alex Smythe, director of photography and senior editor Matthew McGurk, videographers Matthew A. McDonald, Mark Warden, editors Nathan Clement, Daniel Waldman, narration Bill Hunt, media accessibility specialist Ron Rickford, audio post Mike Monson, color Adam Kemp, graphics Mike Smith, Andrew Antonello, senior producer Michelle Dudas, president and CEO David Arrington, copyright 2022, Accessible Media Inc.